Hi everyone, hope you're doing well. Before I begin this video and you'd like to use OCD Recovery's coaching services, please reach out to Phil at ocdrecovery.com and he'll get back to you as quick as he can. So yeah, today guys, I just wanted to speak a little bit about existential OCD and some of the nuances of it that aren't typically covered. So yeah, with existential OCD, there can be lots of different angles to it, What's the meaning of life? What's my purpose? Am I living in a simulation? Am I the only living thing? Is everybody else a robot? And with existential OCD, what happens is you can get hyper aware of many different things. So hyper awareness of your existence, hyper awareness of your actions, and it ties in with free will OCD. You can become hyper aware of seeing the world through this lens of dread. You can get hyper aware of seeing the world through DPDR, and overall, it's just that sense of uncertainty and the sense of the unknown. What happens in the face of all these events? What happens after I die? What happens if I have or don't have free will? What happens if I'm in a simulation and I'm the only living thing? So lots of that. There is lots of uncertainty that we do have to go with here, and uncertainty for existential is the biggest thing, right? It's the biggest exposure that you could possibly have, just sitting with not knowing, all right? Because you're never really going to know. Like with any other cases of OCD, you're never going to get absolute certainty on anything, but because with existential, there's bigger things that come into the equation, such as life, death, meaning. Those things that we tend to put on a pedestal, that uncertainty sensation can feel very much locked on and very difficult to budge. The fear of being stuck in that forever and not being able to see life how it was before that. And with existential OCD, you're seeing it from this lens of, whatever the particular theme is, right? So, the fear of being in a simulation or being the only person, or seeing it through that lens of dread. And there's a hyper awareness of that sensation and being locked in that forever and thinking, how did I possibly not think about this before? Now all of a sudden I can't stop thinking about it, right? So it very much ties into sensory motor OCD, existential OCD. It's getting very comfortable with those sensations, getting comfortable with the DPDR and noticing the world through that certain lens, and changing your relationship of that, right? And changing your perception of, even if I was seeing the world through this lens of fear, or changing your perception on, even if I was the only living thing, how could I, come to terms with and adjust to that while still living my life in the best way that I could, right? And I think with existential OCD, whilst there is a lot of uncertainty, it's important to remember that whilst we do exist on this planet, right, a lot of our life is just geared towards survival, right? A lot of it is geared towards eating, making money so we can support ourselves, having a home, reproducing. That's not as a reassurance, it's just the reality of it. I don't want you to go around saying, well, that's the meaning of my life, to survive. No, but the reality is that us and lots of other organisms and mammals and whatever, their existence is just to prolong their survival and, to keep up the species with generations that come, right? So there's lots of that. So yeah, it's important to be aware of that, but it's also, the uncertainty, right? What if and the fear like I outlined there, what if I stay stuck in this sensation forever? What if I never really know? What's the point? And I wanted to be quite specific with this call as well. So a couple of people that I've had lately has been some very sort of interesting cases of existential OCD, maybe not your typical ones. So one I've had was every time I wake up and go about my day, I just see the world through this lens of fear, through this this sort of darkness, right? It's almost like this fear of foreboding, and I just see it's almost like you've got a veil placed over your eyes and you're seeing the world through that lens of dread and fear, right? And it's very much dark and black. And what you have to do is you have to allow yourself to notice that sensation whilst you're going about your day, right? And what can happen there is you get very scared of noticing that sensation because before it set in, life may have been good and there wasn't that hyper awareness of the sensation, which has got the fear of disrupting your life and not being able to enjoy those moments and being stuck in that. It's your perception of that sensation that is actually driving the cycle, right? And like I said there, the fear of not being able to recover and getting back to who you were, right? So there's a lot of that going on. And then also there's free will OCD, which is one that we're starting to see a lot more of. And free will OCD essentially it means that you have intrusive thoughts, doubts about free will, personal agency, the nature of reality. And people with free will OCD will actually question whether their actions are truly their own, or whether they have genuine choices, or whether their decisions are predetermined, right? And again, like with existential OCD, a lot of this is just going to be getting comfortable being uncomfortable, right? And getting comfortable not knowing for absolute certain whether it is. But having said that, there are some insights on that as well. So imagine somebody has a gun to your head and says, "Hey, Elliot, you need to go and open the fridge, or I'm going to shoot you." Right? More than likely, the person is just going to go and open the fridge. Right? But having said that, you could also say, well, when somebody touches a hot stove, right, when it's very hot, that initial reflex reaction sort of comes in automatically. So you can't really think about that in the moment. It just sort of happens, right? And you could also say that with sleep. You know, we don't manually go to sleep. It sort of automatically happens when it's out of our control. So, you know, there's a case for either side there of whether we have free will or not. But the reality is that we have to get comfortable with the uncertainty and look at the core fears there, because the core fear there is lack of control, right? And lack of control does underpin a lot of existential themes, right? As well as the uncertainty, it's that fear of losing control. It's that fear of, you know, not being able to comprehend. It's the fear of not being able to bolt down that right sensation of being stuck forever. It's the fear of, you know, you being so sort of detached from yourself, or being detached from the world around you, that you don't have that control, and that maybe you're being controlled by some sort of higher power, as if you're a puppet and he's the master, right? So again, with existential OCD, it's getting comfortable with, even if I did lose control, how could I adjust and how could I respond to that? Because if I didn't have free will and I was being controlled by something, well, surely I could have compassion for myself if I acted in a way that I had no control over, you know. And I know that's quite a scary thought to think, well, maybe I am out of control, maybe I don't have personal agency. But again, it's coming to the worst case scenario of, even if I didn't have control over my actions, how could I respond to that? Even if I did stay locked in that sensation forever, whether it's a dread, whether it's a foreboding, whether it's a hyper awareness of your existence, your thoughts, you know, even if I stay stuck with that forever, even if I lost control of that, whatever the ramifications of that, you know, maybe missing out on being happy, missing out on good moments, feeling disconnected, even if all of those things happen as well, how could I adjust and how could I adapt to that on a deeper level and make peace with it, from the lens of unconditional self and life acceptance? All right. And I think obviously with, you know, AI being quite a big thing now, and it's really growing, we're going to see a lot more cases of existential OCD where people are questioning their reality, questioning the meaning of life, what's real, what isn't, you know, the uncertainty, the hyper awareness of that detachment, and being stuck forever, and you know, how much control do I have, what's real, what's fake, you know, getting comfortable with that uncertainty without trying to figure out, without trying to solve and going down the compulsive math problem solving in your head. You need to just allow that initial rumination to be there and get on with your day as best as you can. And like I said, make peace with the worst case scenario. All right. So yeah, a few things to think about there with existential OCD.